Do you like the idea of getting yourself or your business on the Today Show without paying a cent? I thought so. Then listen up, as the Today Show's Chief of Staff, Joshua Del Pozo, explains exactly how you can. It's a star-studded episode 617 of the 13-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show, where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of glitz and glamour marketing. I'm your host, Timbo Reid. I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses just like yours, exactly like yours, to grow. And I do that by having a weekly in-depth conversation with a successful business owner who's walked the path before us. You, infinitely more importantly, you're a motivated business owner and you're ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there's marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Quick bit of news up front. I've been scammed again online. I won't go into the detail, but I just want to remind each and every one of you, lock down your social media so that only your true friends can access it. You know, you don't know who you're dealing with online, so just make sure it is your real friends, not your friends in inverted quotes, you know what I mean? Change your passwords constantly, use strong ones, use a different one for every different platform that you use, not just social media, but your banking, your cloud stuff, everything. Don't click on any links that anyone sends you. Ring up the authority that you think it's being sent from and just make sure it's the real deal. And don't trust the person on the other end of the phone, the text, or the email. I hate saying that. I'm a very trustworthy person. I was a very trustworthy person. We've just got to be real vigilant these days. I heard some crazy stat on a podcast recently with a cybersecurity expert that said there are 1 million jobs becoming available just in America alone for those in the cybersecurity industry. It is a growing, unfortunately, industry, and we just need to be super vigilant. And now on with the show. Joshua Del Pozo is the Chief of Staff for The Today Show, one of Australia's most watched current affairs and news-based TV programs, watched by hundreds of thousands of Aussies every week. Basically, he's the guy responsible for the show's content, the topics covered, and the guests that appear either as special comment providers or as news stories in their own right. So if the idea of getting yourself or that beautiful business of yours on national television appeals, and why wouldn't it? Then stop what you're doing right now and focus as Josh steps us through exactly how to get free national TV coverage. He even gives out his personal email address, and he gets a ridiculous amount of emails a day, which he answers every single one of them. A very, very generous guy is Josh. Oh, a quick point on any limiting beliefs you may carry around this topic. Even if the Today Show is not your cup of tea, or maybe you think that social media is where you need to focus your marketing attention, please don't underestimate the flow-on effects for you or your business of being featured on primetime TV. Yes, you'll get national TV coverage, build brand awareness, maybe even make more sales. But who knows what else may happen? Another media outlet may want to cover your story. A potential strategic partner may contact you, or your mum will just be super proud of her golden child. All right, I started off by identifying the elephant in the room. How does mass media stay relevant in a time when most of us as consumers are getting our information, I think, from social media and the internet generally?
I think that it comes down to trust at sometimes as well. You know, like during the pandemic particularly, we saw huge audience uptick in terms of turning on to traditional mainstream media. Our numbers went through the roof because people wanted trusted platforms to turn to. You know, we joke about the Gladys press conferences and Anastasia Palaszczuk and Dan. Everyone was tuning in for the numbers, for the cases. Everything was done through that. I think it's that trusted form of communication. I mean, we always have to figure out that social media streaming is slowly but surely taking over. But we integrate all of our approaches through that. You know, sometimes if there is a big press conference, we stream live through Instagram, we'll stream live through Facebook. It's a huge tool. But I think the key for us is sifting through what's trusted and what's not trusted. I think that maybe you can appreciate during the pandemic, or when there's a big news event happening, say there's riots somewhere or Ukraine and Russia tensions, I feel like most people are going to go, okay, I'm going to get this from a reliable source, turn on Channel 9, hopefully, if not Channel 7, ABC, yes, you know what I mean? I feel like that's still the key place where people get their certified news from, if you like.
Yeah, look, I wasn't, and it certainly wasn't trying to be, it wasn't an interrogative question. And it's quite interesting because despite the fact that, you know, many people I speak to say, oh, I don't watch a lot of free to air. When someone is on a show like the Today Show, or whether it be a current affair or a news story or whatever, it is amazing how many people pipe up and say, hey, I saw you on telly. So
exactly right.
That's a good acid test, right?
100% sure. That's the test right there. People are still watching, you know, and I think that people will continue to keep watching. I think that, you know, traditional forms of media definitely skews toward an older demographic. You know, we're generally speaking that we're targeting those, you know, families, the over 65s. I mean, people under 30, traditionally, the first thing they do when they wake up is pick up their iPhone.
Yeah. Do you have a stat by any chance? I haven't a question without notice, but do you have a stat about catch-up TV? Because the Today Show goes live every morning. But I've heard some crazy stat somewhere with that the majority of viewers, listens, come from catch-up TV on these smart apps on the TV. Is that true?
I don't have it on me in terms of the figures. We go by a day-by-day rating system, which still is ratings boxes, believe it or not.
Mate, welcome to the Stone Age.
And don't get me started on ratings boxes. But nonetheless, we see there's a massive audience on 9 Now. You know, we're seeing each year or each month, the audience is growing and growing slowly, but surely in the direction that people are streaming. I guess the other thing as well is, like, even for myself downstairs, I haven't got an antenna. I use 9 Now to stream. It's a stream the Today Show. When I'm driving to work, I'm streaming the Today Show on my mobile so I can listen to it. So you're right. People are slowly moving that way. Haven't got the stats for you on exactly what it is.
That's all right, man. We are here to talk about how small business owners can get publicity on the Today Show and TV generally. Before we get into that, one other question. I did observe, as the internet really got traction many years ago, and even up until recently, I've noticed a lot of mass media, particularly press, newspapers, have struggled to integrate, have struggled to use social media, have struggled to really embrace it and seen it more as a competitor. Maybe that's just me, but did you feel that in the early days? And, you know, how is a show like the Today Show these days making best use of social media?
I'm perfect for that. I started at the Today Show as a social media producer. So
wow.
8 years ago, I was tasked with basically fronting up Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You know, not just myself, we had a team of social media producers live in the studio. We'd clip up content that we already had on the show. We'd also be capturing our own content, behind the scenes sort of stuff, you know, driving people to our pages. You know, if you missed this interview, or you can watch it here. It was huge. And we've seen that slowly start to change. TikTok. You know, that's a completely new platform that, in my opinion, is underutilized across the board.
Yeah, it's the smoky in the room at the moment for sure.
It is huge, and so, you know, we right now are lucky enough to have 2 brilliant social media producers that front up all of our platforms. You know, and I think that we do a pretty good job of it. I think last time I checked on Facebook, we have somewhere around the realm of 2.3 million followers on Facebook.
Which you kind of expect that. I mean, I never know whether a number's good, bad, or indifferent when I look at someone's followers on social media. But clearly, that's a big number. You would expect that at the Today Show. What kind of content works best? Is it when you've got just a big name interview and you cut that up, or is it some behind the scenes stuff of your on air hosts getting made up, or what is it?
Look, behind the scenes stuff, I think always piques people's interest. It's like the unseen. It's what they don't get to see every day on the TV. But conversation pieces, conversation starters, it could be as simple as putting up a post saying, you know, this woman has done this. Do you agree or you don't agree? And then you obviously have the Facebook keyboard warriors jump on and want to put their 2 cents into it.
Yeah.
And we get so much content from that. But in other words, in other ways, competitions do incredible for us. People just like to win stuff, but also, picking the best interviews that we've had throughout the day and putting that out there. It's just another avenue, another stream for people to watch the best content.
I did a couple of years work on the Macquarie Network radio, and each time I was in at 3RW in Melbourne, often one of your news presenters, Peter Hitchener, was in there doing Nightline, and just a great fellow. And I ended up getting him on this podcast many years ago because he's an absolute weapon at social media. His content's a little bit boring, a little bit nannerish, but hey, that's his audience. But as an example of, for those who don't know, for overseas listeners, Peter is one of Australia's leading newsreaders on Australia's leading TV network, and he just does a lot of behind the scenes stuff and gets amazing traction. People love him for it. He puts all ego aside and says, hey, this is me, this is my life. He doesn't go too private, but he certainly shares, and it seems to work.
Oh, he's brilliant. And I was going to ask, how's your social media skills?
Terrible. It's a great question, and thank you for asking it, because I don't normally get interviewed on my show, but it's and my listeners know, Josh, that I have a love-hate relationship with it. I won't go into detail, but for the purposes of your knowledge, I'm a father of 3. My kids are now in their 20s. I hate social media. As a father of 3, used to be teenagers. As someone who represents the marketing of small business in Australia, I think social media can be amazing, but geez, I'm actually struggling to find a guest who's absolutely nailing a Facebook or an Insta. I found a guy who's nailing TikTok. He has a donut shop out in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne and is actually one of 3 business owners in Australia who TikTok sends to Qantas, to Westpac, to the big brands to talk about how to use it. And this is a small guy, a baker in the suburbs of Melbourne. But, mate, I find social media frustrating. I find that many business owners think it's a silver bullet because it's free. Oh, I'll just get on Facebook. I'll just get on Insta and all my marketing problems will be solved. Bullshit. Not the case at all.
No, it's a fickle tool. It
is a fickle tool. Yeah. I will move on because I want to get into publicity. But lastly, any tip in particular you would say to the business owner listening, the accountant, the masseur, the chiropractor, the lawyer, any mindset shift they need to make in order to make it work?
I mean, it's gonna be similar advice that I offer a little bit later in the podcast, but just think about the audience that you're putting your content out to. Like, what are they getting from it? So, like, when you're doing a post, where you're doing a story, whether you're doing a status update, what are the people that are viewing this going to get from it? If you think of it from that lens, your content's going to be tenfold better. Stop thinking it from this, sometimes I feel like business owners get very just tunnel vision, or it's kind of like everything is my shop, or it's the be all and end all, and what I have to say is really important. If you just remove yourself and go, what do my customers, what does my audience, what do they actually want to hear or see from me? Is it the fact that I've got a sale on, or is it a discount, or am I looking for employees, or what am I doing differently to everyone else that's going to make them want to come and visit me or consume my product?
And therein lies one key marketing fundamental, Josh, which is respect your audience, understand their needs, and go and solve their problems. And it's not about you, it's about them. So whether it's be social media or a TV ad or a networking event, it's the same principle.
And we live and die by that on the Today Show. We have to listen to what the audience wants. That feedback loop's so important. We just can't keep pushing out content every single day, which is 3.5 hours every day, and just hope that it sticks. Like, we have to get that feedback loop, and that's why we have an inbox. People can write in like, I didn't like this, or I loved this, or and that's why Facebook and Instagram is also so critical. If we put something up and we get flooded being like, this was terrible, we listen to that. Sometimes
really?
You don't have to listen to, well, not all the time. I think you have to take that feedback on board, is what I think you need to. It's good to look at everything that you're receiving as well. I think it's important to have that feedback loop. Otherwise, you're just pushing out content, not hearing any feedback.
How does that feedback loop work for something like a Today Show? Because, the decision makers aren't, I'm assuming, listening to it. Do you have people who consume it all, and then have some kind of spidey sense that says, hey, we better send that tweet off to the boss, or that one's important. How does that work?
Well, I guess I'm one of the decision makers, so I can tell you that we do listen to it. You know, we have a very strict policy with our social media team. Like, hey, if you guys are seeing something or hearing something that we should be across, tell us, because we need to take that on board. You know, similar sort of thing through our Today Show inbox. Sometimes people will get up in arms at a particular thing we did, and we'll make sure we do it differently. So I can definitely tell you we listen. I think it's super important.
You're the chief of staff for the Today Show. It sounds like a position that's more apt for the Pentagon or the White House. What does the chief of staff of a successful TV show do?
It's a funny title. It's a funny title because you think it's like chief of staff of the White House or the president or the Pentagon. I'm a problem solver in a nutshell, but I basically oversee 3.5 hours of Brekkie TV every day. We have producers, we have editors, we have cameramen, we have a whole news team dedicated to writing our news, and it's getting the formula right every single day. So, you know, across 3.5 hours, it's getting the right news balance, slices of life, you know, Aussies doing real things, consumer stories, a bit of finance, and it's getting it all into a pot and making sure that it works. And getting that mix right every day, it's got its challenges. But at the end of the day, we're a news program to our core. You know, I could get a call right now saying that a member of the royal family's died and we need to chuck out the entire show, you know, because that's at the core of our program, we're news. So the chief of staff is like the overseer, oversees all the content and the ideas and I guess in turn makes it happen, but you're also like delegating a lot. So, you know, you might lock something in and say, okay, well, you know, producer 1, you need to pull this together. Producer 2, can you go down to the beach and film this? All right. Editor number 1, we've got this to pull together for Thursday, so can you do that? And then you're constantly liaising with your higher-ups to make sure that the content's right.
It's a content creation role, overseeing a content creation role, which is kind of interesting because, you know, with the internet, everyone's creating content, whether it be podcast or YouTube channels or TikTok reels, or it's just we live in a world of content.
And that makes my life easier because sometimes those people who are creating content on TikTok and Instagram, they're doing brilliant things and we go, hey, we want you on the Today Show. So I'm all for it. Create as much content as you want.
Your job pre-internet would have been a lot harder because now someone like you, I guess, I mean, imagine almost is not the majority, a good portion of your content is user-generated, is listener-generated. People sending in their videos, hey, I'm in a car accident, I just took this photo or this video and send it into the Today Show. Are most of those people wanting money? How does that work? Do they want money for it? Are you getting, do you pay for it?
I mean, like a current affair definitely skews that way where a lot of their stories are user-generated, where it's kind of like, we want to hear your stories. You email the inbox and they turn a story into gold. I guess in those cases, they're not looking for money because they're looking for a problem to be solved. Say it's the dodgy tradie or the dodgy builder, you know, they're getting a current affair on side to help fix the problem. So it's not so much a money thing. We fall by the same way in regards to like we're there to help solve problems and fix problems. By all means, if you happen to capture, you know, an incredible fight or a car crash or something on your iPhone and you've managed to film it in horizontal and you send it through, there's a chance that you'll get paid for it.
It's interesting around that production values, which I grew up in an advertising agency and production values were everything, you know, and it feels like and for what I mean by that for listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, just the quality of the video or the quality of the audio or the quality of the framing, it's always been beautiful and clients, businesses have paid big money for that. It would appear production values are falling day by day because we as viewers and consumers of media are more than happy to watch someone coming in via Skype from their office or coming in via Zoom or, I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I think there's two things to that. I think we've gotten used to that because of social media. I think that you'll watch any sort of dodgy video or whatever it is, as long as it's engaging as you're scrolling through Instagram. The other thing is that the Zoom generation. I mean, like during the pandemic, we had to think laterally and think how we're going to get cameras to people and how we're going to make it work. And we had to think of Zoom. We are now in a position where we try and revert to sending cameras. You know, we're reverting back to the traditional style because Zoom isn't that great. It can be, but when you're trying to do a live cross to a breaking news story or halfway across the world and, you know, all of a sudden the internet's clogged up, imagine live TV, you're doing a live cross to someone on a really important story and then the audio goes. That's not reliable. So I agree with you in a way, but we're trying to get back to a better TV.
Yeah, well, I suppose as the cameras and the lenses and all that on the smartphones get better and better, and the microphones, it's good. You get a lot of approaches, I assume, from business owners wanting to appear on the Today Show. I was once involved in an entrepreneurial course called Key Person of Influence, and I know that many of those people, we all wanted to get on the Today Show or some form of TV, whether it be to build their own personal brand, to create awareness, to get exposure, whatever it is. Let's just start to talk about what can small business owners do who are listening, who think, oh, that'd be pretty cool. Wouldn't mind a bit of exposure for my little accounting practice or my little whatever it may be. What do they need to do to give themselves the best chance? And I'm sure it's not a short answer to this, but let's try and unpack it.
We'll try and unpack it. I think there's two things pop into mind for me. It's kind of like you need to understand as a business owner what kind of route you want to go down in getting some attention. So do you want to be like an expert or commentator and we plug your business? For example, let's say, why don't we use a accounting firm, like you said, and say, well, we're doing a segment on finance. So do you want to be the person who comes on from the accounting firm that we use as like a finance expert and we in turn then plug your company? Or do you have like an incredible story where you think, well, no, actually, I think that Today Show need to know more about this story. Like I have an incredible story to tell about me and about my brand. I guess they're the two things you need to differentiate yourself. We've had incredible guests come on in the past as option B and they've had an incredible story to tell, and we're like, shit, they are brilliant talent and they know their shit so well. We actually then get them back on as an expert.
Yeah,
so there's no simple answer to that. We had some incredible guys come on during the pandemic in regards to the building shutdown, and we had them comment on behalf of the small business, being like, it's destroying my livelihood, I can't get enough money to feed my family. But they spoke so well that when new building issues come up, we're like, that's the person we need to call. And we get them on as a result, and we introduce them by their brand name, which in turn then generates, what you could hope then generates more, I guess, work for them, or at least publicity in some shape or form.
So let's split those two. So the first one is someone who's got a story to tell. So I had a fellow on a few years ago, Richard Kelsey, I think was his name. He had a business in Sydney called Beer Cartel, tiny little small business that stocks a lot of craft beer. So it's an industry that's growing, an industry that people have interest in. In order for Richard to get publicity, he went off and decided to create Australia's craft beer annual survey. Okay, and he did that, and it's the reference point for anything you want to know about craft beer, coming from a little guy in the suburbs of Sydney who really shouldn't be doing that. It sounds like something that CUB or Lion Nathan should be doing. He does it. It generates some amazing results. He finds himself on every news outlet across Australia reporting on this Australian craft beer annual survey. So good idea, right?
Brilliant idea. And I think it's a perfect example of someone who's gone, what I'm doing is very advertorial, like as in like, and I guess that's a key thing to differentiate as well, is like advertorial and editorial. Just getting your business on for a live cross or even a pre-recorded story on you and your business comes across very advertorial. People at home are quite privy to that and kind of go, oh, that seems like a bit of an ad. But what he's done is a brilliant job of making his story editorial and gone, here's an idea. An example I can give you, and it's actually easy for me to talk about because it's a close friend of mine. He started Australia's first T-shirt subscription company, right? And so we're good friends. He obviously wants exposure, but he's smart enough to know that I just can't put him on the Today Show. He comes back to me in about a month's time after he launched, and he said, mate, I've got a pitch for you. How about the Today Show does a story on the future of the wardrobe? Here's 4 different businesses that are revolutionizing the way that you're going to dress. I was like, that's brilliant. I was like, because I'm not just picking you, I'm actually broadening the story, looking at 4 different businesses. And before we knew it, we had a story. It was on the Today Show, and we featured 3 other business owners who were doing different things to revolutionize your wardrobe. It was a great story. And I think that's a good idea. The craft beer one's just that, where if you think laterally and come up with something like that, it's helpful for us because it's more legitimized content.
So that your mate with the T-shirt business is clearly a bit of a strategic thinker. and has the ability to come up with an idea like that, which is a bit of a no-brainer. Once you hear it, go, yeah, that's an obvious idea.
Exactly,
that's interesting. People will watch that. To the average business owner who hardly gets time to think on their business, they're always in their business. Do they need to go and find a publicist or a PR agency? Because this becomes an expensive option. I guess the return is equivalent to the investment, but yeah, what do they do? Do they just...
It's so tough because at the same time, whilst I do get reached out to by business owners, by LinkedIn and my email, there is something professional about getting an email from a PR representing someone. And look, I'm sure that your listeners are going, that's not what they wanted to hear, because that's another cost to them. Cost of living is going up, and that's the last thing they want to spend money on. There's a professionalism that comes with that. If I get an email saying, hi, I'm X, I'm representing blah, and this is what they've got to do and what to talk about, it does help. But at the same time, the PRs aren't always coming up with the ideas for you. Another example I can give you, and this is a bit of a bigger business, but Kickin' In, it's a seafood chain where they basically, you may have said, well, I'm a social media fan, but Kickin' In on social media do these big bags of seafood, and they basically put down on the table in front of you at the restaurant, and they open them up and all the seafood falls in front of you. So what they did was during the, probably a couple of weeks ago, there was a story, which I'm sure we're going to touch on, about capitalizing on the news cycle, but there was a big news story going around in regards to Christmas casuals, Christmas chaos, and there's just not being enough staff anywhere. And so he came up with an idea to basically do on-the-spot job interviews for anyone that walked in to Kickin' In. And I think he was even offering them a certain percentage of a higher pay. Great idea. He approached a PR. The PR contacts me. I then go, that's a pretty good story. Again, I don't just feature him. I then feature all the different businesses that are thinking outside the box to get some Christmas casuals. So that's how the story developed. But I think... I know that small business owners, as you said and appreciate, don't have the time to always come up with these ideas. And if they don't have that time, then probably working with a PR will help them. But if they're onto a good idea and they think they've got a good, what's a better way of saying it? I guess a clear idea of how they can crack into the media, like the guy who had the craft beer idea, I think then by all means reach out directly.
I must say, having said that, and yeah, I mean, I am always hesitant on this podcast after 13 years to sort of suggest ideas that are going to break the budget. But the reality is, I am surprised at how many emails I personally get from PR agencies representing pretty small businesses looking for exposure. So, maybe it does. I've never reached out to a PR agency and asked what it costs, but maybe it doesn't cost as much anymore. And maybe the smart PR agencies are onto this and have got little packages, $2,000-$3,000 packages where they say, hey, listen, we'll sit down with you, we'll take a brief, we'll work out a story and an angle, and we'll send it out to our list of chief of staffs and programmers that may listen.
And that's the other huge benefit, is that PRs would have the most incredible database of contacts. That's where you're going to hit your gold mine as well, is that you're going to reach out to one PR, you're going to have an idea, an email, a press release, then there's going to go and deploy it out, and hopefully something sticks. And I think that, I'm not sure if you've spoken to a PR on the podcast, but that could also be something that you could look to do, to give your listeners some advice on what PRs do, why they're helpful, maybe going through why it is right for you, or maybe a business is not up for that yet, and talk about the different kind of packages there are. Because there are massive PR agencies that represent, well, that what I've dealt with, you can imagine, like, brands like Coca-Cola, Aldi, Pizza Hut, they're the huge conglomerates. But then you've got the niche PR agencies who are literally representing small businesses in suburbs like Penrith, in Brunswick, even in Noosa. So you know what I mean? I think that could be really helpful. I'm not too privy to that information and can't. I'd be lying if I tried to fake it. But I think that maybe that could really help.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now that we're talking about this, about an hour before doing this interview, I replied to a PR agency in Sydney who was representing a fellow from a restaurateur in Sydney who's got 4 Hong Kong-style restaurants that are absolutely smashing it out of the park. So, relatively small business owner who's employed it. So it works. Let's talk about the other side, Josh, that is the small business owner looking to provide opinion on a newsworthy. That's the other side of the coin, is it? someone who's
I
just
think
want
that
to
is
say,
the other side of the coin. And to be honest, a lot of those times we're not really having them reach out to us. We're finding them.
you've already got them.
We've already, and that's just it. We've already got them, but we're always open to have more. The audience does want differing opinions and different voices. We're not always just going to have the same person on every single time. But I think, and we don't always get emails in regards to coming on as an expert. I do get people reach out to me directly, but some of the best people we've found is literally cold calling businesses on their business phone. When the lockdowns were happening and we wanted to hear to a restaurateur in Southwest Sydney, I just said to one of the guys, just get up Google Maps, scroll in, pick your spot, and just start cold calling. And we spoke to some really amazing people that we still speak to. We found them.
Wow. I wouldn't have thought you'd be so, I mean, that's quite a broad little brief, that one, because then it comes down to talent. Is this person,
and that's so critical, is that you might
can they speak? Can they articulate their message?
You might meet the right person. You might pick up the phone. The most frustrating one is not just even if they're good talent. You could speak to them for 20 minutes on the phone, and they are telling you every single piece of information you want to hear. And you get to the end of the interview, and they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I actually don't feel comfortable talking on the Today Show. Sorry." And then you've gone, "Oh my God, I just wasted 20 minutes." But it's a real tough one, finding someone who's legitimate to talk on the topic, who's good on TV, and is willing to open up and speak their mind. It's very tough.
Super tough. And it is a different game. I mean, the thing I love about podcasting is we can do this. We can have a conversation, essentially. I mean, I don't have a time limit. My guests generally do, but it's long-form conversation. I've been on radio. I've done the odd TV, been a guest on the odd TV interview, and it is daunting. You don't have time. The hosts are like, they've got their agenda, they've got their questions. You can't and ah. You've just got to cut to the chase, answer their question, and there's probably not going to be a follow-up question. They're going to move on to the next topic, and within 3 or 4 minutes, it's like, fuck, where'd that time go? Excuse the French.
It's quick, and it goes and the funny thing is that there's as much planning as you want to get into something. Like for example, today's podcast. We have a bit of a chat. There's a bit of questions that go back and forth. But we don't really stick to them. We just we have a bit of talking points and themes, then we just talk as mates. The same thing happens on TV, where I can brief a talent and say, we're going to ask you X, Y, and Z. But by the way, Carl and Ali, who are hosting, will ask whatever they want to ask. You almost right. Give them talking points to make them feel comfortable, but full knowing that it might go a little on script.
So, what makes great talent? And it's a bit of a leading question, because I reckon there's this sort of, most people think, oh, you've got to be up and about, and you've got to be funny, and you've got to have a smile. But I remember saying, I did a conference many years ago. I spoke at a conference in Dubai, and it was full of mortgage brokers. And I had this fellow come up to me afterwards, and he got talking to me, and he was full of knowledge about mortgages. He knew everything there was to know about mortgages. And his name's Grant. And I said, Grant, you've got to do video marketing, mate. You've got to get onto YouTube. You're awesome. You've got so much knowledge. He goes, oh, but I'm so boring. And I said, Grant, exactly, mate. If you were my mortgage broker, and he is to this day, I want you to be boring. I want you to be a numbers-driven guy. I want you to be geeky. I don't need you telling jokes. I don't need you trying to engage with me. I just want you to be So for you getting talent, and for those people listening who think, oh, I might have a crack at this, is it about being funny and engaging and entertaining, or is it about being yourself and just honouring that authenticity, which is a word I hate, but I had to use?
Well, look, I'll use it right back. I think authenticity is what is going to make you shine, and it depends on the story. If we're doing a live cross to a business owner who's just been affected by the floods, well, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from your heart. I mean, if you are someone who is upbeat and funny and can throw a joke in at the end, and despite what I'm going through, and throws a joke in, that's fine. That's them. That's what's real. What we don't like is people who are standoffish, who are super scripted. people who would just, have their points and they just try and get through them. But at the end of the day, we have to realize that people get nervous. You chuck a camera in front of them and they get a bit of stage fright. No matter how much talent checking you do, sometimes people just miss. And I think that if you want to come on the Today Show or any other network, or maybe radio is more for you, or maybe doing a newspaper article or something, just be yourself, be articulate, be confident in what you're saying, and that's what's going to get the job done.
Let's talk about what to pitch. I mean, there's a press release. You could do a video on your iPhone and send it to someone like you. You could reach out to someone on social media and hassle them that way. You could send some kind of wow package, which would probably be deemed as a bomb, and it would clear out the entire Channel 9 building. So you've got to be careful these days of what you can and you can't do. But any advice around, I guess the question is, how do I get the attention of someone like you?
I guess the attention, look, we spoke before we hit record about my emails, and I do get upwards of 1,000 a day, and I do usually try and get through all of them. I try
Really?
and promise it. Yeah, no, I really do. I try and get through all of them, and I try and make sure that I reply to everyone, or at least have a 2-day turnaround for some things. I think that if you want to try and get someone's attention in an email, do not send an email that's like 5-6 paragraphs long. I need you to sell it to me in like the first part of the email. Who you are, what you're doing, why I care about it. You also have to think about, I'm the Today Show, I'm TV, so I'm a visual medium. So what visually am I going to see from your story? Maybe some of your listeners will go, oh, okay, well, in that case, maybe I'm more radio, or maybe I'm more newspaper then, because all I need is 2-3 beautiful stills. But for the Today Show, we need picture. And if we want to get a coffee shop owner on and talk about whatever they want to talk about, sometimes we do have to send our cameraman there to shoot some nice, we call it overlay or B-roll to supplement the story. But I'd always to tell your viewers pictures. Think about what we're going to be seeing while we're talking to you.
Do you only get one shot at this as a business owner?
No, I don't think so. I think that you can have multiple shots. You're not always going to get it right, up front. And I think that'd be pretty discouraging to say you've got one shot, one opportunity, take it or leave it. I think that you're not going to get it right every time, and you're going to constantly keep learning. I think that's maybe where a PR would generally help in terms of like the formatting of something. But I think most business owners are pretty smart, and they probably get their own emails that they get and go, oh, that's quite professional. We have amazing tools on Google. I'm sure you could type in press release, template and do something that way. But I think coming across professional, but also selling it to me in the first paragraph is like ultimately critical to being able to get my attention, because I'm filtering through so many emails per day. There's some emails that I get that I can just delete. I know that I don't need to see them. And I want your business to not be one of those.
Websites like, I think locally in Australia, it's Source Bottle, and there is one in America called Harrow, Help a Reporter Out. You have furrowed your brow, which tells me that you don't know what I'm talking about.
I haven't.
Okay.
I've heard Source Bottle, but I'm actually not sure what it is.
Okay, a lady by the name of Rebecca Derrington, who I had on this podcast, I reckon 12 years ago, started Source Bottle. And I remember following her on Twitter, following Source Bottle on Twitter. And it was where reporters would pay a monthly fee, or journalists would pay a monthly fee to then be able to post on Source Bottle, hey, listen, I'm doing a story on middle-aged overweight men. Oh, that'd be me.
Okay.
And then you could, and then those middle-aged overweight men could put their hand up and go, yeah, that's me. I'd love to do that. Or, I have a business that I'm a GP that treats middle-aged overweight men, and, come and interview me. So, okay, so you haven't heard about those. So that tells me that they're actually not that necessarily that efficient anymore, or maybe never were.
In my experience, no, I can't speak on behalf of the industry as a whole, and I'm sure there probably are some journos out there that do utilize Source Bottle and who are on a daily basis searching for very key talent. We utilize our own social media for those sorts of things. So if we are looking for a struggling family with their energy bills, we'll put that on social media. Are you struggling with the energy bill? The Today Show wants to hear from you. Send it, or on the Today Show, we'll do live on air. We'll say, Christmas time is coming up. How are you spending it with the kids? We want to hear. And so we try and generate that from our audience. So it is our audience we're hearing from. Otherwise, sometimes we do post in community groups. if we need to.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I personally don't use Source Bottle.
You talk about capitalising on the media cycle, Josh. What does that mean?
It means that you need to capitalize on what's trending. Is the way of like stripping it right back. But what's happening in the news right now? So I gave the example before in regards to the Christmas hiring and the casuals and that sort of thing, and then the business owner going, "Oh, that's a big news story at the moment. I'm going to do something differently." That would get my attention because I'm like, "Oh wow, you're responding to what's happening in the media." I'm trying to think of another example, but maybe if like Easter was coming up and they were doing something different for Easter, or doing something different with Easter eggs. Or I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but just capitalizing on what's happening in the world right now is really going to help you get that hook into getting on the Today Show, because we're all, as I said before, we're a news program at our core. So if you can respond to the news, you're going to be like 10 steps ahead.
It's even, I mean, from a Today Show point of view, it's a great strategy for those listening who want to get on, to capitalise on the news cycle. It's also a good search engine optimization strategy, because if there is a news event happening and your business can some way contribute to it, solve it, be a part of it, then going and writing a blog post and putting it on your website is actually a pretty effective way. I'm sort of digressing here because it's not relevant to you, but because what happens is all of a sudden people are searching for that news event, and if and it gives your blog post a chance of getting up.
Like for example, off the top of my head, think Socceroos, right? So let's say the Socceroos make it through at 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, which I hope they do. Imagine if a business owner was like, "All right, we're going to host an in-house competition in our community to find the Socceroos' biggest fan, or the Socceroos' biggest legend, or we're hosting the Socceroos' biggest welcome home party." That's fun. The Today Show will be like, "That's really cool. We'll get you on for that." So it's like capitalizing on what's trending now, what's happening now. That'll help 100%.
You are super accessible. I mean, that was proved to me by when I reached out to you. I think it was via LinkedIn, and you responded within hours. You were also saying you get 1,000 emails a day, you go through them. One of the sort of the laughs we have on this podcast over the years is the idea of how do you get past the Dobermans, right? Because for people like you, generally, and I know you're going to give your email address out at the end of this podcast, which is absolutely awesome. But you'll have more than 1,000 emails a day coming through. But often people like you have a whole lot of Dobermans in front of them. Now, I had a fellow on a few years ago, Steve Sims. He has a business out of LA called Bluefish. It's a concierge business for the rich and famous. His clients include Clooney, Elton John. And I did a whole episode with him about how do you get a client like Elton John? And he talked about getting past the baby Dobermans in order to get to the big Doberman, which was Elton's husband, who then got into Elton, right? And he explained that, and you got to understand each Doberman along the way, because they have needs and egos and wants, and you satisfy them, and then they go, "Oh yeah, I'll pass you on to the next Doberman." And you get, you don't have you don't have Dobermans. I imagine others in your industry. I imagine there are Dobermans, and if there are, any tips on getting past them?
Well, it's a good question, and I think every industry and I think every channel and every program would be different. I mean, on behalf of the Today Show, I guess, and I've been introduced at different events as the gatekeeper, because I do generally get every single pitch and every single idea. Look, I'll be generous, 95% of the time, I know whether a story is going to work. I'd like to think I do. So in a way, by instinct, you kind of go, this is going to work. 5% of the time I question myself, and that 5% of the time I turn to my big Doberman, who is the director of morning television, as well as our senior supervising producer, and kind of say, "Hey, other Dobermans, what do you guys reckon about this?" Because I should not just be the key central person and make the opinions on what goes on the show and what doesn't. I think it's got to be a community effort, a team effort, and I think it's so important to, I guess, reach out to your tribe, your Doberman clan.
Yeah. Your litter,
to get varying opinions, because I have got it wrong. I sometimes do get it wrong. I will always, week on week, I'll make the wrong judgment call. And I think it's so important to utilize that. Tips on getting past them. It's so hard. Just always be good to the little Dobermans.
Yeah, I think life skill number one, be good to people.
Be good to people. Be polite. If you're promising something, live up to the promise as well. The amount of times that I've been reached out to by not so much small business, but a PR who has promised me something, then it's then it's burned me or they've dropped out at the last minute. I don't like to keep a black book, but I keep a pretty good memory of who's been good to me, who hasn't been good to me. So there's some people, and I won't name names, but there's some PR agencies that I get an email and I look at it and go, you've really stuffed me around in the past, delete. And there's some people that I will have massive amounts of time for because they have been extremely beneficial to me and they've always lived up to their expectation. So I guess in the longest answer possible for that very simple question is always just be nice to the little Dobermans, because those little Dobermans are going to be speaking to the bigger Dobermans.
That's right.
Going to help make those decisions.
Not hard. We've spoken a lot about email, and I just thought, that it's pretty old school email. And there was so many, like even someone like me, like there's people coming in through LinkedIn. That's how I contacted you. Then you've got Messenger, then you got Twitter, then you got Facebook, then you got Insta, and then email, and there's the phone, and then there's text messages. I mean, it's the world's gone mad, and our bodies are not keeping up with this whole need to be able to be contacted 24/7 by all these different channels. But that's life. 2 questions there. One specifically about email. How important is the subject line in order for you to then open that email and read it, or are you opening every email? And if it's not email, what's another way of getting to you?
Subject line is so important, like so important. You need to basically, and the best example I can give you is that when you look up at the Today Show and you see that strap that runs along the bottom of the screen, which basically in essence tells you what the story is and why you should care about it, do the same thing to me.
Yes.
Just sell it to me in that subject line. I'll revert back to the guy, my mate, who has that brand called Lennox Label, the T-shirt subscription thing. When he was reaching out to other media, because I always said to him, you can't just reach out to me, you need to deploy yourself elsewhere. His subject line said, Australia's Netflix for T-shirts. I was like, that's catchy. That's
Brilliant.
Fun.
Got it.
Straight away, you kind of go, it's a bit of intrigue. You go, what is that? I want to know more about it. So intrigue is good. I mean, don't fake or falsify anything just to get me to open up the email, because then I'll be let down. But if you have a really good hook or a good selling point, put that in your subject line.
Absolutely. And I'd go as far as saying, if you're going to spend, the 100% of your time you're spending on writing an email to someone like you, I'm going to say 60% of that time spend in the body copy of the email, and 40%, maybe even 50% of the time spend crafting a clever subject line.
I'd say so. I mean, as well, you can always write the subject line last. Write your body first, get through the body of it and go, okay, now how am I going to summarize this in one go? Is your subject line the business who is offering double pay to anyone who works here, for example? Or is it, the business who is putting up a $50,000 reward as a referral fee? So, they're just 2 things that have popped into my head, but that would pique my interest and go, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about it.
Within that email, Josh, are they best? Is it a words best, or saying, hey, hi, I'm Tim. I'd like to appear on the Today Show, talk about podcasting. Here's a video I've done, and it links off to a private YouTube video. Are you going to watch that, or you just want words?
No, I mean, look, we said we're a visual medium.
Yeah.
We need to see pictures, especially if you're selling yourself to come on. I want to see who you are, how you sound, all of those things. So I think that's super important. But sell it to me in the email, the body of the email first, and then you can always link at the bottom.
Brilliant, mate. Hey, Josh, how do people contact you out of interest?
I'm kind of regretting what I said before. No, kidding. Look, you can reach out to me on email. So my email is jdelpozo@9.com.au. Spelled out, that is JDELPOZO @9, which is the word, not the number, .com.au. Said that a few times. And by all means, you can see me on LinkedIn. I'm not huge on Twitter. Facebook and Instagram are usually reserved for private stuff. So LinkedIn and my email is definitely going to be the best avenue.
Well, precious listeners, you have just got past the Dobermans and got straight to the top. That is amazing. Well, I'd love to think that at least one of my listeners find themselves on the Today Show at some point in the coming 12 months.
Fingers crossed.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing. I said to you at the top of this interview before we hit record that, I don't have many non-business owners on this show, but I think it's a topic absolutely worthy of having someone of your position on and talking about it. So, getting exposure and awareness as a small business owner is everything. And I really appreciate the tips you've shared.
No, and I appreciate you reaching out. And I hope that even if just one listener gets something from what I've said, that means the world to me. I want the Dobermans in the industry to be accessible. I think that we shouldn't be these scary gatekeepers that are not accessible and that you can't reach out to. So if one listener gets something from it, mate, I'm really appreciative.
Well, there you go, team. The Today Show's Chief of Staff, Joshua Del Pozo. What a generous fellow with plenty of great tips to sink your teeth into. And like I said up front, even if the Today Show's not your cup of tea, or maybe you think that social media is where you need to focus your limited marketing attention, please don't underestimate the flow and effects of being featured on Prime TV, like I mentioned at the top of the interview. As always, team, you'll find links to the other episodes mentioned during my chat with Josh over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/617. Now, who's been calling me?
G'day, Simbo. It's Mike Hall here from MPH Safety Solutions. We're a South Burnett-based safety advisory and training business that focuses on trade and construction businesses. I just wanted to say thanks so much for the marketing gold. In fact, I think I can see some dripping from the ceiling where I am. Really appreciate what I believe to be the absolutely thorough job you do in producing what I think is the best educational tool for small business in Australia. Mate, I'm working away at the moment, and apart from those great podcasts I can listen to in the van, the Boomerang Effect is going to get another read. Mate, keep giving us the gold. Really appreciate the work that you do, mate. Thanks, Timbo.
Hey, Mike, you are a superstar. What an incredibly generous, loving message. What beautiful words, mate. I really appreciate it. Hearing that just kind of revs me up to do more of what I've been doing for these last 13 years, and I'm so glad you're getting massive benefit from it. Thank you, Mike. Everyone else, be like Mike and call me on 0480 015 150 and let us know what marketing is working for you at the moment. I'd love to hear from you. 0480 015 150. It'll be the final show for the year next week, and it's a ripper. You're going to meet one of Australia's leading chatbot experts who'll share 6 ways chatbots can grow your business. It's pretty interesting. A whole new world, a brave new world, some would say. So tune in for that one. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app. Even feel free to leave me a review if you're really feeling generous. You'll also find 616 more chats with successful business owners on your app. This show was stitched together by editor extraordinaire Alex Amster, the music bed written, sung and produced by our very own Lockie Doley, who is touring Europe at the moment and America. Total rock star, really. Thanks for tuning in. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.